What's up there, YouTubers and fellow riders? I came back at it again, cooking up another DIY tutorial for you on how to replace your inverted fork seals. Hopefully at this point in time you've already gone ahead and reviewed the first two tutorials where I showed you how to build your own custom tools and take down the pre-existing settings that you previously had before removal of any of the parts that we're going to be working on today. Just as a point of reference, I'm also including within these images commonly used phrases or terms that I'll be using throughout the video. So if you don't quite understand, go ahead and revert back to these images so you have a better understanding of what I'm talking about. Just as an FYI, guys, you should have already loosened this fork cap bolt while it was on the bike. If you went ahead and removed your forks from the bike, go ahead and stick them back in there, tighten down the top of the triple tree clamp, and loosen this bolt while it's on the bike. It's a lot easier to remove it on the bike than it is in a vise, as it tends to swirl around as you put pressure on that nut. Once you got your threaded rod all locked into place, you're going to be using two 17mm open-end wrenches and applying pressure in an outward direction. You're going to go ahead and loosen the pinch nut from the cap bolt. Once everything's loosened up, go ahead and remove the cap, exposing the rebound rod. I'm going to clean that up a little bit and kind of put that off to the side. We'll be working on that a little bit later. As a quick note, you always want to take note to disassembly, because once we disassemble, we always have to reassemble. So kind of get a mental image in your mind, or kind of place them to a side in the order that you took them apart. You can always refer back to the images or this video if you kind of get lost when you're putting things back together. Throughout the video, guys, you're going to see me cleaning up a lot of these parts, and what I'm actually doing is cleaning off the previously old fork oil, which you see is kind of dark, dingy, and black. The black part of this is actually metal shavings that really fine metal shavings that has deteriorated over time from the fork tube sliding within itself. So you're going to want to go ahead and try and clean that off as best as possible, but you will never actually get it fully clean. Once I begin disassembly, you're going to notice that my fork oil is extremely black. And this is after like 94,000 miles on my bike, and I don't think this has ever been changed. But the service manual recommends changing the fork oil every 32,000 miles. Once you've freed the fork tube from all fork oil, you're going to let that hang for about 15 to 20 minutes minimum. And I recommend just letting it hang there while you clean the other components. Here I'm showing you the actual spring, and one side of the spring has a taper to it, and that taper side needs to go up into the spacer tube. So just take a quick note to that as you disassemble, and kind of check it out for yourself. As you can see here, guys, I went ahead and put some microfiber cloth on my clamp, on my vise grips, in order not to scratch the gold tube. The gold tube gets scratched extremely easy, so you want to make sure you protect it as best as possible and wrap up as many points that come in contact with the gold tube as not to scratch it. Once you remove the dust cap, guys, don't throw this away. You're going to be using it at a later time. We're going to use this to protect the fork from any prying that we're going to be doing at the top end of it. So be sure to put this aside somewhere where you're not going to lose it. One very important key note here, guys. If you're doing your basic servicing, which is replacing the fork seal, oil, and dust cap, you do not want to scratch the bushing that sits underneath your seal. If you scratch that bushing, which has a special anti-friction coating, you are going to need to replace that as well. So take note to that. Do not scratch that bushing Teflon coating. Once you have your bushing free from the gold tube, you're going to want to take note to the orientation of which you pulled it out. On the top half of the bushing, you're going to see a spring container within the bushing. This side goes up facing you. On the bottom side, it has a deep valley. So just take note of the orientation. Make sure to save this bushing as well, because we will be using it to install our new one. Last but not least, we have our large washer. The large washer sits at the very end of the tube, and when you remove it, you're going to notice that one side of the washer has a circular groove carved into it. This circular groove goes facing downward. If you happen to have scratched this washer while removing the seal, you're going to want to take some fine grit sandpaper and sand down any sharp edges that you have carved into that, as not to scratch our new seal. What I'm showing you right here, guys, is the actual bushing with the anti-friction coating inside of it. If you have scratched this bushing, like I said before, you're going to want to make sure you remove it. For me, at this point, I really didn't care about the bushing since I'm going to be replacing it, so I got a little jiggy with it as I was removing it with my fork tool. But again, if you are not going to replace this bushing, and if it's not part of your kit, then you want to make sure that you are extra careful when removing your seal as not to scratch it. As you can see, I'm taking my old dust cap and I'm kind of using it as a barrier as I pry and press down on my fork tool. Now, if you don't use this, you're going to leave little gouges within the metal on the top of the fork tube. For those people who are anal about it, it really doesn't matter. It doesn't get seen. but I kind of like doing things the right way, so I'm kind of using it as a protector as I push down, trying to remove that bushing. Again, if you're not removing the bushing, there's no need to do this. Just as another FYI, guys, the bushing is extremely snug in there, and without this our specialty tool, it took me the first time on my first fork about a good 45 to an hour to try and remove the bushing with just the fork tool and screwdriver. With the specialty tool, I was able to remove the bushing in less than 5 minutes. So it really benefits you to make that specialty tool in order to remove the bushing. When you're using your pry tool, like the fork tool that I'm using here, you gotta make sure that you just kind of rock it left to right and get a big enough gap so that we can get our specialty tool in there, so that we can just pull up on it really easily. Alright, so what I'm doing here is I'm going to be using a hammer and a large socket. This socket you should have in your tool set. This is one tool that you should buy and purchase. This is actually the socket to remove the castle nut, which removes our back wheel. And so I always hate buying tools that I'm not going to be using all the time, but this is one of those tools that you are going to need, so I do recommend you buy the large socket in order to remove your rear tire. But this large socket is actually going to help us get our bushing in place, as it fits directly over the bushing, and you're just going to slightly tap it in, fixing it into place, and then moving it to the floor. So once we got our new bushing in place and it's sitting inside the gold tube, we're going to take our old seal and we're going to place that on top of the new seal as a buffer. Now if you try and do this, if you try and pound in the new seal without the buffer, you're going to pretty much damage it, and it's better to have this buffer in place so that you can slightly tap it in and get it into place and then move it to the floor. But do not attempt to use the socket on the new seal. If you do, you will most definitely damage it. What I'm about to demonstrate right here is how far the seal actually needs to go down, and you only need to get it down so far as to get the retaining clip back into its position. You're going to notice a ring inside the gold tube, and that's where your locking ring clips into place. So we only need to get the seal down so far enough to get the new locking ring into place. The retaining clip is probably the easiest part to get in, guys, and it's just basically you're just going to stick that inside there and wait for a large snap. Once it's in place, you're going to give it a little nudge with your fingers and make sure that it doesn't pop out on you, and once it's tightly and secured in place, you're pretty much done with this portion of the build and you have completed the fork seal replacement. After this, if you're not moving forward with the fork cap and you don't have these parts, then you're just going to go ahead and fast forward to the next portion where I show you how to clean the chrome tube. Cleaning and inspecting the chrome tube is probably one of those very most important aspects of this build. The chrome tube actually slides along the PTF coating, or the anti-friction coating on the bushing, as well as our seal and our dust cover. Any type of debris or scratches within that chrome tube is going to transfer onto these parts, and you really don't want that, and you'll probably most likely be back in here in a short time. So make sure that you clean and inspect really well. If you do happen to find some scratches and within the chrome tube, you're going to want to go ahead and sand those out with some real fine grit sandpaper and then polish it back out. As for a cleaning agent, simple green will work, and some parts cleaner, but make sure you spray that parts cleaner on the rag and not directly onto the chrome tube. Once you've put in your fork oil up to the level where I've previously pointed out, you're going to want to reach in and grab that rebound tube and stroke it up and down until you remove all the air from inside the cylinder. Now you're probably going to sit here for about a minute or so and gently rock this tube up and down until you actually see oil come out of the top. Once you finish pumping the rebound rod and all the air is removed from the tube, your fork oil level is mostly going to be dropped a bit. So go ahead and pour a little more oil back up to the line that I previously pointed out, and this completes the portion of the fork oil. installation.